They just indicted James Comey. Not for corruption, not for espionage, but for words, a statement made before Congress. Yeah, you heard that right. A former FBI director, once the embodiment of federal independence, now stands accused by a Justice Department run by Donald Trump's closest allies. This isn't routine politics. It's the moment the justice system begins to fracture from the inside out. And here's the kicker. If they can prosecute the man who once led the FBI, then nobody inside Washington is beyond reach or beneath revenge. Let's rewind. James Comey, the tall, methodical, by-the-book lawyer who guided the FBI through the Clinton email storm, the Russia probe, and finally his own firing by President Trump. To some, he was a hero who protected democracy from political interference. To others, he was the interference, a bureaucrat who tipped elections and lied under oath. But through it all, one boundary seemed sacred. The Justice Department should never take orders from a president's political machine. That line? It's gone. In late September 2025, a federal grand jury in Virginia returned an indictment charging Comey with lying to Congress in 2020 and obstructing a proceeding. On paper, the case sounds procedural, a technical perjury dispute. But prosecutors inside the department say it's something else entirely. Payback. Career attorneys in the Eastern District of Virginia reportedly refused to sign the indictment. They warned that evidence was weak, that such a move would destroy internal credibility. Their objections didn't matter. Enter Lindsay Halligan, a Trump-aligned attorney turned federal prosecutor. Within weeks of taking over the office, Halligan greenlit the case. Soon after, resignations began. Long-serving prosecutors were told to clear their desks. National security leads were replaced by loyal newcomers. One veteran described the atmosphere as a purge in slow motion.
Then came the image the administration wanted. Comey walking alone through the Alexandria courthouse doors. No cuffs, no press statement, just a long, silent walk. Humiliation by optics. Inside the building, the cameras flashed like thunder. Outside, protesters held signs reading "Justice" or "Revenge." Every network broke into coverage. The U.S. government had just turned one of its own guardians into a defendant. While that played out in Virginia, another stage lit up in Washington. Attorney General Pam Bondi was grilled for hours before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Democrats accused her of converting the DOJ into Trump's private legal arm. She shot back, claiming she was ending the weaponization of justice. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Bondi dodged questions about internal firings. She refused to reveal conversations with the White House, but she promised one thing: more accountability cases to come. To her supporters, that meant cleansing corruption. To her critics, it meant political hunts dressed up as law enforcement. Then came the leak that ignited Washington. An FBI agent was reportedly removed from duty after refusing to stage a perp walk for Comey. He'd been ordered to escort the former director for cameras. He refused, saying, "We don't do theater." Hours later, he was gone. Within a day, the headlines hit fever pitch. DOJ in turmoil. Carrier prosecutors revolt. Revenge politics go federal. Capitol Hill erupted. Republicans hailed the indictment as long-delayed justice. Democrats called it authoritarian payback. Cable news hosts lined up experts debating whether America had just crossed the line from democracy to political retribution. Inside DOJ offices, fear spread faster than press releases. Lawyers whispered about who might be next. An assistant U.S. attorney described the mood. Every meeting feels like a loyalty test.
Trump, meanwhile, was ecstatic. At a rally in Pennsylvania, he told supporters, "The people who lied about me are finally facing justice." He framed the indictment as proof that the deep state is being dismantled. The crowd roared. Behind the scenes, senior aides reportedly celebrated the optics, not the law, the optics. Back in Washington, Bondi defended herself again. The DOJ is finally focused on real crimes, not political witch hunts. But when asked why so many prosecutors were leaving, she smirked. "Change is uncomfortable," she said. Reporters later noted that nearly a dozen career officials had either resigned or been reassigned since Halligan's arrival. A purge that deep hadn't happened since the Nixon years. And yet in public, everything looked orderly. Briefings, smiling press photos, the Attorney General insisting this was simply restoring balance. Balance. That word echoed through every headline and every skeptical whisper in the Capitol. The political clash reached Congress like a thunderclap. Senator Schumer warned that the DOJ was becoming an arm of political vengeance. Senator Cruz fired back that no one, not even the FBI director, is above the law. Both statements are technically true, but together they frame the impossible paradox now tearing Washington apart. Because the issue isn't whether Comey's innocent, it's who gets to decide guilt. If the White House now dictates which cases proceed and which are buried, the system's foundation isn't shaken, it's gone. Even judges are uneasy. Federal Judge Alison Burroughs reportedly delayed rulings in two unrelated DOJ cases, citing unusual departmental instability. Translation, she no longer trusts the government's filings at face value. Law schools are rewriting ethics lectures. Professors are telling students to study this moment like future historians will, the day when politics and prosecution finally fused.
Meanwhile, on the streets, the reaction splits by worldview. In conservative circles, the indictment feels like long-delayed karma. In liberal ones, it feels like an existential threat to democracy. And for the millions in between, it's just another sign that the system no longer serves ordinary people, only whoever wins the next election. Inside federal agencies, morale plummets. Staff begin encrypting internal messages, fearing they'll be monitored for disloyalty. Some start quietly requesting transfers out of D.C. Others simply stop talking politics altogether. And still, the case barrels forward. A trial date is set. Comey pleads not guilty. Outside, chants echo. Justice, not vengeance. Inside, prosecutors prepare filings under watchful political eyes. In private, one DOJ veteran summarizes it. This isn't law anymore. It's theater. And the audience doesn't know the script has changed. Meanwhile, Trump's allies seize the moment. They point to years of investigations, from Mueller to impeachment, claiming this is balance finally restored. They say Democrats are only panicking because power is shifting back. It's an argument that lands well on television, even if the cost is constitutional order. Across social media, narratives harden like cement. Half the country cheers the takedown. The other half calls it fascism in slow motion. And for the first time, it feels like both sides might be right in their own ways. Because one side truly sees a reckoning, the other, a collapse. Both can't be true, but both feel real. Inside the department itself, chaos deepens. Internal emails show new reporting structures, new approval layers, new chains of command. Cases once handled autonomously now require sign-off from politically appointed supervisors. That's not oversight, that's control.
And control spreads. Regional DOJ offices are quietly told to review legacy cases opened under prior administrations. Translation, look for targets we can reopen. Suddenly, prosecutors in New York, California, and Illinois receive calls from headquarters asking for case summaries on political figures, governors, mayors, even campaign donors. The purge is no longer rumor. It's replication. The system that once prided itself on independence now looks more like a hierarchy of obedience. And deep inside that machinery, one truth emerges. If this precedent stands, the rule of law will serve power, not protect against it. What began as a single indictment could become a template, one administration prosecuting the last over and over until faith in justice collapses entirely. That's the real story behind Comey's courtroom photo. Not just a man on trial, but a system testing whether it can survive being turned inward. But here's where the tension spikes, and nobody in Washington wants to finish the sentence. Because if this actually moves forward, if the DOJ secures a conviction, if a jury validates a politically driven case, then every future administration will inherit the same weapon: sharpened, proven, and legal. And once that happens, there's no going back. So ask yourself, what happens next? What happens when justice itself becomes partisan currency? When independent law becomes just another campaign slogan? Hold that thought, because what comes next changes everything. Because what comes next isn't about James Comey anymore. It's about what this case unlocks. The indictment is no longer a courtroom drama. It's a precedent, a living, breathing test of how far political power can reach before the public stops believing in justice altogether. If the DOJ succeeds, even partially, it rewrites the rule book of American governance. Because now indictments aren't about evidence, they're about loyalty. And loyalty, once enforced by law, is indistinguishable from fear.
Let's strip away the headlines for a moment. Every government in history that blurred the line between politics and prosecution started here. One symbolic trial, framed as accountability. Rome called it purging corruption. Moscow called it defending the revolution. Every regime finds a noble word for vengeance. America is now flirting with the same language. Officials talk about restoring balance, correcting bias, protecting national interest. But those phrases are camouflage. They hide something primal, the instinct to punish your enemies using the machinery that once protected you from them. Trump doesn't need to shout orders. He's built an ecosystem that understands what he wants. Every firing, every indictment, every quiet reassignment sends a message louder than a tweet ever could. And Pam Bondi, she's not a rogue actor. She's a signal, the embodiment of a department realigned to reward loyalty over law. That's why her Senate hearings mattered less for what she said and more for what she refused to say. Because silence at that level is policy. Behind closed doors, the dominoes keep falling. Senior DOJ officials describe restructuring memos, polite language for purges. Internal investigations into politically sensitive cases are quietly reassigned. Whistleblowers claim that certain names, judges, prosecutors, journalists, have been flagged for review. It's not rumor, it's the architecture of control. Meanwhile, those still inside the DOJ face a brutal choice. Speak up and risk your career, or stay quiet and become complicit. Most choose silence. It's safer that way. Inside the Beltway, the psychological shift is unmistakable. Senators lower their voices in hallways. Journalists triple-check sources before printing anything critical. And agencies begin mirroring the new order. Less independence, more obedience. This isn't chaos. It's design. It's how institutional power bends, not with a bang, but with a whisper and a memo marked reassignment.
But America has seen echoes of this before. In 1973, Nixon tried to kill the Watergate probe by firing the special prosecutor. It backfired spectacularly. But 2025 isn't 1973. Back then, the country still believed in institutional guardrails. Today, those guardrails are social media outrage and 24-hour news cycles, neither built to hold the weight of democracy. And unlike Nixon, Trump doesn't need to hide behind secrecy. He governs in plain sight, using chaos as cover. Every scandal buries the last one. Every headline numbs the next. That's the genius and the danger. Because when everything feels political, nothing feels sacred. And when nothing's sacred, justice becomes just another brand. Inside the FBI, morale has cratered. Agents whisper that every case now feels like it needs White House clearance. Some quietly joke that they should start wearing campaign pins with their badges. At least then, the hypocrisy would be honest. Comey's case is the mirror reflecting this decay. If he's convicted, it won't be because of overwhelming evidence. It'll be because the narrative demands it. A guilty verdict would serve as proof that Trump's DOJ can rewrite history, retroactively punishing those who challenged his power. But even an acquittal won't fix what's been broken. Because the damage isn't in the verdict, it's in the process. It's in showing the country that prosecution can be political theater, that loyalty can outweigh legality. Now imagine where this leads. Scenario 1, conviction and collapse. Comey is found guilty. Bondi declares victory. The White House celebrates the cleansing of the deep state.
and that phrase becomes doctrine. Democrats push for hearings, but House Republicans block every attempt. Civil liberties groups sue, but courts, now cautious, tread lightly. The DOJ gains something more powerful than fear: precedent. It's now legal, at least procedurally, to punish dissent under the banner of national justice. That's the slow birth of soft authoritarianism, not through force, but through paperwork. Scenario 2. Judicial rebellion. A federal judge throws out the charges citing abuse of process. Bondi appeals. The White House fumes. The narrative shifts to corrupt judges protecting their own. The base rallies harder. Trump uses the setback to argue that he is still the victim, still surrounded by enemies. Even in defeat, the playbook works. Destroy trust, claim persecution, double down. Justice survives, but only technically. Public faith does not. Scenario 3. Endless stalemate. The case drags on for years. Appeals pile up. Comey fades from the headlines. The machinery of prosecution keeps grinding quietly. Case after case, under new targets. No spectacle, just erosion. Slow, quiet, total. By the time anyone notices, political prosecution has become normalized. Each path ends in the same place. The DOJ loses its soul, and the public, exhausted by outrage, simply accepts it. This is how democracies decay, not when citizens stop voting, but when they stop believing justice is real. Once the system feels rigged, loyalty replaces law as the currency of power. People align not with truth, but with whoever promises protection. That's when accountability dies. Every great nation that's fallen into internal collapse started here, when its institutions served politics instead of principle. The Roman Republic, the Weimar Republic, dozens more. They all had laws. They all had courts. What they lost was trust. And that's what's slipping through America's hands right now. Because the Comey indictment is more than a case. It's a test, not of guilt, but of endurance. Can a nation survive when truth becomes negotiable? Meanwhile, political operatives are already seeing opportunity. Future candidates are quietly studying this blueprint: how to use the DOJ as a campaign tool. Prosecute your rivals, stall investigations into your allies. Flood the system with so many legal battles that accountability becomes statistically impossible. That's the new frontier of American politics: litigation warfare.
Forget debates. Forget policies. Tomorrow's power struggles will be fought through subpoenas, indictments, and televised trials. Each party armed with its own legal army. Each victory measured not in votes, but in convictions. And in that world, democracy doesn't die in darkness. It drowns in legal paperwork. Some lawmakers are beginning to see the cracks. A bipartisan group in the Senate quietly drafts a bill to reestablish prosecutorial independence. It would require congressional oversight for any indictment of a political figure. Good idea, on paper. But the votes aren't there, because deep down, neither side wants to give up the weapon now that they've seen how effective it can be. That's the tragedy. Every time one side screams abuse, the other quietly takes notes for later. And so, the United States stands at an invisible crossroads. If Comey is the first, who's second? A former attorney general? A sitting governor? A journalist? The list grows with each week the system tolerates this. Inside the DOJ, new recruits are told to stay mission-focused, but they whisper a different phrase among themselves: just keep your head down. That's how institutions rot, not from rebellion, but from exhaustion. Because when fear becomes the air you breathe, silence feels like safety. We can debate guilt or innocence all day, but the bigger truth is simpler, colder, more dangerous. This isn't about one man lying to Congress. It's about whether the truth itself still matters. In a healthy democracy, justice protects the system from power. In a broken one, justice protects power from the system. Right now, America is deciding which version it wants to be.
So let me ask you, is this justice or retribution? Accountability or control? Are we witnessing the restoration of fairness or the rehearsal of tyranny? Because once justice becomes partisan, it never returns to neutral. Not easily, not peacefully. The real verdict isn't coming from a Virginia courtroom. It's coming from every American watching this unfold, deciding whether to care. Do you trust what's happening, or does it terrify you? If you believe the truth still matters, share this. If you think the story is far from over, you're right, it's only beginning. Because the greatest danger isn't what's happened already, it's what this makes possible next. And that is the part nobody's ready for.